Up next, we got some more people. Hold on. Cheat sheet. Jim. Where's Jim? God bless you, Jim. Up next, we've got Jim Smith. Jim, he's known me since forever, and he was one of the guys that was essentially instrumental in giving Pops his opportunity. You know, he was the opportunity when Dad's preparation met opportunity, and that spark hit really, really hard. And we've also got my uncle, number 2 Lynn boy, Michael Lynn, coming up next. Guys, go ahead. Come on over, Jim. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to go hide in this cubby hole again. This is awesome.
Hard to believe it was 40-some years ago. I got transferred from running a couple of stations in Texas for Clear Channel to move to Tulsa, take over KMOD. And when I got here, Phil Stone and Jeannie Triplehorn was the morning team, and we had a good staff, good nucleus of a staff. And I was thinking, yeah, it's going to be all right, not bad. Until Jeannie walked into my office one day and said, I've had an opportunity to go to Juilliard School of Acting in New York, and I'm out of here. And I thought, now what? And Phil soldiered along doing mornings by himself and played a lot of music, and he was a great DJ, but the station was missing some magic. And we had a feature called Bad Joke Wednesday, some of you may remember. And Charlie West, bless his heart, the late Charlie West, who was my program director, was bringing tapes in every day of people he had submitted for the job, and we listened, and no, not them, and our consultant would bring us people, and was, no, that doesn't feel right for Tulsa. And there was this guy on Bad Joke Wednesday that called in every single Wednesday, and he had a joke that I knew was topical and timely, and it was about Tulsa, and it was about a current event, and it was always done in a different voice. And I told Phil one day, who is that? No idea. Well, ask him next time. So he called in the next Wednesday, as he always did, and Phil came running in after his shift down to the office, and he says, it's a pharmacist at the Safeway in Catoosa. And I said, I'm going to see him. And I went out and caught him on break. We chatted for a minute. I told him who I was. And I said, we've been struggling to find somebody to team with Phil in mornings. Would that be something you'd be interested in? Well, yeah, but I can't afford it. What do you mean? He said, well, I have a wife and 3 sons and a house payment, and I can't afford to do radio. Okay, went back to the station. And we searched for another week or two. I went back out to the Safeway in Catoosa. What would it take for you to give it a try? And we chatted about it for a while, and I think I got within $3,000 a year of what he was making as a pharmacist, and I had to give him a 2-year no-cut contract for him to try it. He complained because he was making $3,000 less. What he didn't know was that was the largest contract Tulsa had ever given an on-air personality in our company. So I called the guy in charge of me after I wrote the contract, signed the deal, got him hired, and I said, I finally hired a morning person to pair with Phil. Yeah, I saw that contract come through. Boy, he must be good. Yep, believe he is. Well, where did you steal him from? A Safeway in Catoosa. The first 60 days those guys worked together, I will tell you, and I would tell you all, KSIM in Sikeston, and I was at KGMO in Cape Girardeau. And back then, the disc jockeys from the smaller stations would come into Cape Girardeau because it was kind of a big hub. It was just about 100 miles south of St. Louis. And we'd all hang out together. And there was a disc jockey in Sikeston who would stop by and we'd have lunch, and his name was John. I'll leave it at that, and you'll know why in a minute. And he would always come by and visit, and we got to know each other quite well. And then he went his way to college, and I went my way, and the years passed. hang that story on a hook. I'll come right back to it. The story of Roy D. I used to have a rock cabin in the middle of 20 acres overlooking Tin Killer down by Mayan. And the station was always so hectic and so wild and so much going on that we would sometimes take 4 or 5 of the staff and go retreat for a weekend where I would make gumbo and take some of my home brew down, and we would set up a couple of easels in front of the big room, and we would just brainstorm stupid ideas, and everything we'd write down. Everything from the Valentine promotion I saw on the screen a while ago to putting a t-shirt on the driller at the state fair, all were born of these what we'll call creative sessions. And one night, I'll back up. Bill Davis, the old blues singer here, was a dear friend of mine, used to get cassette tapes from Gary Busey and Gaylord Sartain because they did phone stuff. And Gaylord would work the people in Nashville, and Busey would work the people in Hollywood, and then they would swap these tapes. Nobody ever knew who it was, but they would swap these tapes. Bill would get some of these tapes, and he'd bring them by, and I listened to them. We were going down for one of these creative sessions one day, and Phil and Brent were taking their car down, so I gave them a tape and said, listen to what Busey and Sartain are up to. They listened on the way down. That morning, about 3 in the morning, we're sitting on the front deck with a guitar and a bottle of tequila, looking at the stars, talking about what we could do to really set the station on fire. And Brent said, I'd sure like to be able to do what Busey and Gaylord Sartain are doing, but it's against the law. And it was. You can't record people if they don't know they're being recorded prior to you recording them. Or you have to have a tonal beep every 10 minutes so that they know they're being recorded. This stuff of going in after the fact and asking if you could put it on the air held no water. It was against the law. And I said, well, you know what sounds like a good idea? Let's just do it till we get caught. This is the story that nobody in this room has ever heard, and I forgot to tell Brent later on. We did get caught. After the Ford call where Sharon Jean went to see a Ford Escape and the salesman kept trying to show him his probe, that clip got sent to Washington, D.C. along with a complaint from a competing station in the market saying these guys are breaking the law. And one morning, I got a call from the chief counsel of the NAB in charge of rules and regulations with a liaison to the FCC, who was a straight-laced lawyer from Washington, D.C. He said, we've had a complaint from the station in your market that you're airing somebody called Roy D Mercer. Is that right? Yeah. And they told me that you're recording all these calls and then putting them on the air. And you know that's against the law, right? Well, yeah, I kind of do. Well, he said, Jim, it's John, your old buddy from KSIM. And I went to law school, and I'm now the chief counsel at the NAB with a liaison of the FCC. And I told the complainant, I've known Jim Smith since he did mornings in Cape Girardeau, and I know he probably wrote those scripts and hired voice actors. Isn't that what you did, Jim? Yeah. So he dismissed that with this final quote, which I thought long and hard because I remembered it for a long time, and I wrote it down to make sure because I did remember what he said exactly. He said, hang on to that wink wink scriptwriter because that's a generational talent. And Roy D Mercer lived. 1992, you can tell from these clubs, Brent and me and 2 other guys played in a foursome every Sunday morning at 7:30. Every Sunday morning at Stone Creek. And I was a pretty prolific home brewer back then, so I would always bring a mini keg, and after it was over, we would go out and sit under a tree and talk about anything but radio. And once in a while, when one of the foursome couldn't make it, his dad showed up. And I had the pleasure of meeting and getting to know his dad, and I'll tell you, the acre didn't fall far from the tree. I can tell you, meeting this young man back here, it hasn't fallen very far either. in the history of playing golf with him, which probably comprised 4 or 5 years before I retired, I never saw him throw a club, never saw him get angry, never saw him throw that hat. He'd make a bad shot or something, and it was always just a chuckle and some kind of wisecrack. And after the golf match, when we'd be sitting under the tree, he'd always be talking about Kim or Jeremy or Adam or Jordan or Bailey, his then chocolate lab. Absolutely loved his family. So I'll close with this. There's a Lakota tribe translation that says, "Be the answer to your ancestors' prayers." Brent was a great father, great son, great husband of 47 years, great teammate, great friend to all, and was a great success doing what he loved to do. And in my opinion, you can't be a better answer to your ancestors' prayers than that. Rest in peace, Brent. It's your reward for a life extraordinarily lived.